Wellness Wednesday with Native Wellness Institute. I would just wanted to. I always love looking at maps. I'm borrowing a friend's office, and I was just looking at where the Siksikatepi, Nistu Siksikatepi, Blackfoot Confederacy, Nistu Amskapi Pikani. So welcome to Wellness Wednesday. I just wanted to come and sit with you for an hour. You know, this is just our way of giving back to have dialogue that's positive, productive, and proactive. Woohoo! I was like, woohoo! It's Wellness Wednesday, and how are you guys all doing? I this whole month of July, everywhere I've been, I spent a lot of time in British Columbia, as I shared with you, and I was trying to come up with the topic for today, and so I'm going to talk around. So my name is Theda Newbreast, and I'm just your badass auntie, and I want to talk about healing and wellness today. When I was in British Columbia, I was with Maori people from New Zealand. There was some grandmas. They were all matriarchs from Australia, and then across Canada. There was a lot of really beautiful leaders in British Columbia and all the villages, the coastal people. So like right now, I just found out. Okay, so I just found out there was like a potential 8.8 earthquake that could cause a tsunami. And so I guess I want to start off with, because we have no idea, I haven't heard any of the news. I just want to say a prayer, Hayo Stupatapi, Hayo Ninna, Hayo Napi Natusi, Hayo Akita Biwa, Nagaikimokit Nagaspumokit. Creator, just Stupatapi. I want to say a short prayer for all of the wakas and the canoes that are on the canoe journey, saying prayers for all of us in the globe and all the waterways. I just want to bless each person who's out there out in the water. If there's big waves or little waves, that they can just pull through it, that they can just stay focused, that they can just be okay, that they can just pull each time with their prayers, the vows that they made, for their canoe family, for the villages, and for all of us. Because I was, Creator, I guess I just talking to you, Creator. There's times when something hits us like a tsunami, and we just have to trust and have faith with you. So I just wish that everyone on that journey and listening to this Wellness Wednesday has faith, has good faith. So I just say that short prayer. And I say that short prayer because as soon as I got, sometimes I don't pay attention to the news, and I say that because I listen to NPR for 5 minutes, and I hear through my family often. My family, it's so funny. My sister Lori's truck. You know how like in your truck, like when someone calls you, it announces their name, but it didn't. For my name, it said Theda Newspaper. So my family, that whenever I call, they go, "What's up, Theda Newspaper? What's in the news?" And so these electronics somehow. So when I opened up and heard that there was this tsunami, it made me think of many things, the power of water, many things, the power of our climate justice with our earth adjusting. And they said Russia, earthquake of 8.8 with after effects of 6 point something. So then I think, wow, what if that was like your heart? What if that was like, how our heart is when we get shaken up with some news, at work, at our family, or wherever. And so that was so today's topic is I want to talk around this United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous People. And I say talk around it because I was rereading this when I came back. I went on a 15-day self-care journey with 19 tribes in California, and then with 73 leaders from across the globe. And that just brought me back home, and I haven't got to process it. You ever been somewhere and you had an experience, or our circle camp just 14 days just ended, and then there's another circle camp at Kainai. Another circle camp is building and will go for a couple of weeks. But have you ever returned from something that just changed you? And this month of July, I'm with some colleagues. I've been with my family. I was at Mac River Powwow. I witnessed history. I witnessed at coming to a Montana powwow, and Renee Holly and the Montana Two Spirit Society, they had invited all of us because they were sponsoring a woman's grass dance, and it was just so beautiful. There was 37 dancers, and of course there was Two Spirit, that put on their grass dance, but there was also our allies. And our allies, they'll call it switch dance. Sometimes a lot of our champion grass dancers, I think Rodney dressed his two daughters who are champion jingle dress and champion traditional dancers, but they all put on their grass dance outfits, and they competed for the spirituality of it. Their outfits were so intricate. Just their roaches, and of course, spiritually, their medicine is to stomp down the grass. And all of our dances, even before there was competition dances, it was the prayer. It was the prayer where the grass dancers came out, and they didn't have real fancy outfits, but old-time grass dancers. A lot of the Grounds, I think of the Grounds family at Star School. I think of, I think of my Kicking Woman family. I was thinking about Merlin, and I was thinking about all my first cousins that are grass dancers. In addition to, our colleague Casey Nicholson is a grass dancer. A lot of our colleagues dance grass, or they dance grass. Like, what do you dance? I dance grass. What do you dance? I dance trees. What do you dance? I dance water. Anyway, and just think about the ceremony of it, because they were often called out, and sometimes we were, even in Browning, there used to just be a pole, 60 some years ago. There was actually the Oak Con used to go on there, and then afterwards it was a celebration, and then that became the North American Indian Days powwow. But you think about what the spirit of it, the spirit of, you come and there's just the plains, and there's just this grass, and this grass is just, and there was buffalo grass, there was, we have sweet grass, that you can go and braid, and then we just have grass. And so the dancers would come out, but it was not a hurry up. Any kind of ceremony is not a hurry up deal. The dancers would come out and just, gently pat down the grass, move around the whole circle, and gently with their feet and their moccasins pat down the whole grass. And that was, I ain't got no music, but geez, this is badass. This feeling, and the grass dancers, when they're turning like that, putting down the grass, and they're dancing. And that was the beginning ceremony, and that's why we always have the grass dancers. When you have any powwow, celebration, they come and they pat down. Some people mow the lawn. But no, in the olden days, these grass dancers would pound down the grass. so that it was nice and smooth, so that all the dancers could come out, so that there could be grand entry, so that we could have our veterans come in. So, and you know what? You know why powwows are so powerful? Because nowhere else of the time of the year do you have that many pita, eagle, feathers dancing in. You know, and I was thinking of Cayo, there was 1,000 dancers, and we had kami poismanics. There was people have full bustles, people have their eagle fans. It's such a powerful time because there's that many eagle feathers praying for you. And in the olden days, it would be they would dance for those who couldn't dance, and they still do today. A lot of, and that's I was just thinking, it gives me a tender heart. If you could still dance, do it. And even if you don't last the 18 songs, do 16 songs, do 10 songs. Dance for those who can't dance, and you know what you do is you uplift them. And I swear, just when I was in British Columbia, they doctored us. They took us into a ceremony at Showkale. There was all these villages where the canoe journey is going on now, and when they doctored us, you you could feel it. They were dancing for those who couldn't dance. And even in some of our elders that have walkers or they might have a cane or something that they can't dance anymore, they were still standing up. And I saw one grandma, and she was dressed in her full outfit, and her full outfit was just, and she could not go out there, but she was just standing in place, and she was just dancing to, and that heartbeat of the Mother Earth, that heartbeat of our grandmas, that heartbeat of our grandfathers, just standing in place and having a good time. That's what our gatherings are about right now. That's what our ceremonies are about. It's about, I learned from the Spirit Project, the global group, that we all just got to be involved in play and involved in having a good time, involved in hugging each other, involved in being with each other, involved with feasting, with feeding, with all of that. That energy is where we need to be now, and not in these other places that hurt our heart, or keep us down, or make us doubtful, or make us uncertain, or make us, shrink. Sometimes when someone describes, they say, yeah, I just like to shrink into the corner. It's now a time that we don't let any of our relatives shrink into the corner. We don't let any of our relatives be depressed, be suicidal, be angry, be in that mental health, that creates mean spirited behavior. So anyway, that I was so when I said, man. So why should we talk about the United Nations Declaration of Rights for Indigenous People? This was adopted Geneva in the United Nations in 2007. And it's just I carry the booklet. The one that I used to have kind of like fell apart from reading it, and so I picked out a couple of pages, and I want to have some dialogue and some talk with you. I highlighted, because when I was reading it, when I was flying back home from British Columbia, I had to fly to Calgary, and then I had to get my truck. I had to get War Pony, and I wanted to. I'm just going to read this. I usually don't read on this, this podcast or Wellness Wednesday, but Article 12 says that Indigenous people have the right to manifest, to practice, to develop, and to teach their spiritual and religious traditions, customs, ceremonies, and the right to maintain, protect, and have access in privacy to their religious and cultural sites. The right to the use and the control of their ceremonial objects, and the right to the repatriation of human remains. So I'm just gonna pause there. There's several pages there, but I was thinking about just that right that it describes right, that our right to sacred sites. Do you at this moment go often to, like I was thinking, if you live in Rapid City or you live in North Dakota or South Dakota, do you get to go to Bear Butte? Do you get to go to Bear's Lodge? They call it Devil's Tower. That's not its name. Do in our area, do you get to? We have so many. I mean, and I say our area from the Nastical to all of the mountains, Mogacan. We have all of these sacred sites. We have all of these sacred teepee rings. We have all these sacred medicine wheels. And you go down south, and these areas because um, Itapisco, there's a presence there, like at Sedona, the sacred sites. So when you're talking about us having access with this indigenous rights of every person to sacred objects, sacred places, and then this stood out for me because the repatriation of human remains. I was sharing with a young group yesterday, and they were asking questions like, well, where do you fly from, and how long have you been flying, and we got to talking about Denver Airport, and so I think, and I've shared that story with you before. I said whenever I fly through Denver Airport, I always have to prepare myself. Like I bring a little bit of tobacco in my pouch here, and I have medicines. And at Concourse B, like B68, B69, there's a burial ground below there. And when they were building that airport, I mean, Lee Lone Bear from Northern Cheyenne and several of his helpers came in and they did a ceremony to ensure that the the natives that were buried there, that they journeyed on, that there was a peacefulness. But you think about it, and sometimes, like, if I think about it too hard, I get pissed off. Like, who in the frickin' would come and who would come and bury a burial ground where our ancestors are buried and put an airport on? I mean, that's, but who would come and steal all this land? God dang you. But I don't want to stay in that space. But I was thinking, this Article 12, that we should be able to get back our human remains. So I think about that. So when I go there, I take the tobacco, and it's inevitable. I'm leaving out a B80. I gotta go to B41. But when I'm walking there, I can always feel it, because sometimes the hair on my back of my neck is like. So then I just start talking to Lee Lone Bear. And Lee, I just say, I know you're on the other side. Lee, can you help? If there's anyone unsettled, please help them to journey on. Help their spirit to journey on. And then I make peace with the area, because that's where I have to get on the next airplane. And that's a lot of my life. A lot of, since 1976 I've been flying. And a lot of my life is I've been very privileged, and I want to thank you if you're out there and you've invited Native Wellness Institute to your community, or you've invited me in the past, or you've invited Jean Tagabon in the past, Thosh, Jillian Joseph, Shailene Joseph, if you've invited Cecilia Fire Thunder, Lavina Louie, if you've invited any of our big cadre of trainers and facilitators to your community, I want to thank you. Because when we come there, and I can speak for myself, and I think that's part of why, when I was in British Columbia, I learned so much because I stopped talking. by the second day, I was 8 days with these remarkable leaders, remarkable feelers, and they had this concept, and they had brought us together because they think we can heal the globe by making safe places for babies born to 6 years old. And I'm getting these tears because I learned so much, and this was one of the little booklets, that they gave in our packet that we talked about these indigenous rights. But this, and with these sacred objects and sacred human remains, because this last time when I flew through Denver, I just thought it's not too late. Should we enforce some of those laws? NAGPRA. Should we dig up those and rebury them in a more sacred place? Boy, it's complicated. So I just wanted to, today I want to speak about how do we stay well when we get challenges like that. Like I don't know what this tsunami has interrupted the canoe journey. I don't know if some of my favorite people live in southern Los Angeles. I did call Timothy, and it was just a short call before I started work today, and I go, "Are you okay? Just checking on you." And he goes, "Well, the waves aren't as big as they expected." And then I was like, "Well, what is a big wave? 30 feet, 300 feet? What is how tall is how big is a wave?" But it was not gonna threaten human life, and so as soon as I heard that, I felt better. But then I also heard some of our team members, because a lot of us were, it's summertime, we're participating in ceremonies, we're participating in basketball tournaments in Hawaii, we're participating in sun dances, we're participating in canoe journeys. So, and it is Indians, we kind of like, I said, we're off the clock. It's some they're even on the clock, still getting played, and they're off the clock. But we're celebrating, and I was just some of our teammates and are over in Honolulu. They were flying into Honolulu, and there's supposed to be a big basketball thing going on. And so all I saw, then that was the last thing I thought. Okay, no, I just gotta go to work. I can't. And that's healing. When you start to heal from trauma, when you can't just insert yourself in chaos and stuff you have no control over. It's like that chaos junkie, just the excitement. So I had to unhook because I saw one of our I think it was Dwayne. He said, "Well, when I land, I'm just gonna run up to the highest parking lot because if the wave comes in and come in and because I was listening to people tell their tsunami stories in Florida when people drowned in their attics, and stuff like that. But no, he just kind of said, as soon as I get out this plane, I'm just running to the highest parking lot. No, maybe hoping it's 6, 8 stories high, and I'm just running to the top." But that's a plan, right? That's a plan rather than putting your easy chair out there by the beach and waiting for this. Because some of our people would like, "Oh, there's a tsunami. Okay, let me go get my powwow chair, and I'm just gonna sit out. I would just sit out here and wait for it to come in, and I might make a TikTok." That's our people, anyway. But it is laughable. So when I was, and the reason I picked this up because I keep rereading it, and I'm rereading it different. Like I just got to this Article 12 about protecting that indigenous people, their sacred spaces, their sacred ceremonies, and then their sacred human remains. I was sharing with some young people earlier here that we were talking about hair because there's different tribes. They're younger people and they have all different tribes. But we were sharing about hair, and I was sharing with them. I said, we've been talking about epigenetics, what comes to us from our grandparents, our parents to us. And I said, but your hair is so important here. And I said, I've been in my hair, yeah, it's getting thinner, and I was just like kind of like, yeah. Anyway, I get amused at life. But our hair, because one of the young girls was combing the other young girl's hair and putting it into a braid, and so then we just kind of stopped. And I said, well, we'll continue as soon as she puts the rubber band on there. I don't want to interfere. That's a ceremony when you take the three strands and you braid them together, and that is the ceremony she's doing for her friend. And then whatever hair is left over, if there's hair or hair in the brush or the comb, then you take it and you wrap it and you save it. And this was after one of the women who came in gave me a pillow, and it's one of those pillows you can unzip and wash. But anyway, I said that's going to be perfect. I was saying a prayer, and it was an act of faith. So part of the topic about your faith, I've been saving, and we call it a nest. I've been saving all the hair from all my households, and it means the people that lived in my house, and mostly me, mostly some of my partners, my daughter, and even I was even thinking in some of my animals I've saved their hair, and it's all in this one big bag that I'm going to put into this pillow that becomes a nest. And the reason it's important is because it becomes a nest that in our life, and I'm not quite sure. I'm pretty sure that it's going to be if I outlive my mother, because she might outlive me. My sister Lori said, "Mom, I might outlive us." But anyway, you put all the hair in there, and I've always smudged it. I keep it in a sacred place in my house, and I smudge it. So I have all this hair, because in your hair is all your ancestors, and that's part of the human remains. In this indigenous right, the United Nations. The human remains, and it is your hair, and so it's the nest that in your life you'll be making this nest, and it's to realize you've lived long enough, you have been privileged long enough to have this long, healthy life. You'll put that hair into the pillow, and then the person who you bury, they will rest in the nest of your ancestors. And so I was thinking about that, because like what if we one of my and I'll I talk a lot about my mom, but what if it was my mom that was buried in that nest of hair of all of the aunts and uncles and children and me, and they came and built a parking lot, or they built an airport on it. I was just okay. So what this says is you can't do that. It's wrong. You can't do that. It's wrong to keep us from our sacred places. It's wrong to keep us from our sacred objects. It's wrong to keep us from our human remains. So anyway, there's a couple. What can I talk about today? Because this is my self-care. Okay, so the second one, and I put this one really affected me. And again, this is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And it reads, and it's actually Article 14, number 3. The state shall, in conjunction with indigenous peoples, take effective measures in order for indigenous individuals, particularly children, including those living outside their communities, to have access, when possible, to an education and to their culture, and provided in their own language. Okay, so I just want to talk about that for a minute, because I was saying, on the global, on every indigenous person, because of this because this was passed, and and it took a while to pass in Canada, and it took a while in some countries, but there's like over 100 countries that have this. I don't think Russia has. That's why they had a tsunami. No, that's why they had an earthquake. Pretty soon it's gonna Russia's just gonna crumble. It's just gonna boom. It's just gonna. That's see what happens. That's why it's good to read this book, Putin. Putin. Anyway, I was just. But in all seriousness, this part about having every child, because it says every child, every indigenous child has a right to their own education, their own history. And I so then I just think about that. That means, if what if you have an indigenous child that's three tribes, then they have a right to know all three tribes. What if it's five tribes, which is happening these days? And when you have the preciousness of a grandchild, when you have your first grandchild, and their soft skin, and in a way they're so beautiful, how babies smell, and you get that love. That's how you fall in love. That's our grandchildren. We're at a time in our life where, yeah, we've had heartbreaks and we've gone through all this stuff, but when our grandchildren arrive, we know how to handle love. But when you're given that child, like it says in here, and you're given that innocence of the soft skin, that they haven't even taken their first poop. They're gonna be breastfed. They're gonna be caressed. Just to take it, and you know, just to take it and soothe it. Ooh, how you doing? How are you? How's things going? Oh, I love you. Oh, all that soothing that we give to our grandchild, our babies, or any children that we have. Those child, this Article 14, have a right to their education about their ancestors, about their ceremonies, and about their language. And so thinking, in the world, if things aren't, going right, or you feel scattered, or you feel misplaced, that's why I'm rereading this, because it gave me focus. It gave me focus on what I needed to take care of. This United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And so I just pointed out a couple things, because I was saying, it's summertime. We just need some dialogue to reflect on, why are Indians, we're just having a good old time with all of our Okons, all of our sun dances, all of our togetherness. And so I grabbed a couple of notes, and so I'm how, like they say, it's divine. I'm going to divinely open this up, because as I'm rereading it, Article 46. Nothing in the Declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, people, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform an act contrary to the Charter of the United Nations, are construed as authorizing or encouraging any action which would dismember or impair, totally or in part, the territorial integrity or political unity of sovereign and independent states. And I know that's a lot of big words, but what that's saying is that nothing in this whole declaration pulls us apart. It's almost like it's like an interdependence. It's like we are better and stronger. If you think about it, like on the globe, and that was when I was just paying attention and I wasn't talking, and I didn't have to organize, and I didn't have to cook the food. And I was just listening to these matriarchs and these patriarchs. They were more like grandfathers, matriarchs, and they were grandfathers. They weren't like bossy and Republican and trying to boss you around, take away all your funding. they were, they. I was just so even that. So how do we take, of course, that's the world, but how do we bring it down to the homes that we live in? How do we bring it down to the reserves that we live on? How do we bring it down to the villages that we're in? And how do we bring it down to the reservations? And how do we bring it down to our own home? I was with a group of young people, and they just got the concept because they were asked the question in your house, because they had to draw their parents, their grandparents, like their genealogy, and draw a picture. They were asked, do you live in a multi-generational home? And so, some of them, they were like, well, what does that mean? And then there was helpers. They go, well, you live with your grandma, and you live with your auntie, and you live with your cousin. So that means you have it's not just mom and dad. So, and they go, what do you mean? So in other words, well, you got your grandparents and your parents, and you're living there, and some of your cousins are living in there. So you have multi-generational. So think about that, in that article about in your home where you live, and say maybe it isn't in the same home, but it's next door. Say it's on the same street, or it's down the hill, or it's in the same vicinity. You're living together. How do you live together well? How do you show up being adulting? And I say adulting, and adulting means that you've had some spiritual development, that you're clean and sober, that you work on your behavior. You have someone, you might have a sponsor, you might have a mentor, you might have a therapist, you have someone who helps you grow spiritually so that you can contribute to that household, or that you can contribute to that block, or to that village, or to that reserve. And that brings us down to, how do we take care of ourselves? I was today, when I was dressing, I knew I would be talking to you, and I chose one of my necklaces that has red ochre on it, and I thought, well, one day at a time. I've been reading my Al-Anon book, and it was about having faith, and so I decided to wear this because it's close to my heart. I decided to, I'm really proud, on our reservation, Rhonda, I'm the old person family. There's just so many, the Weatherwax family, all in Montana. We have a collective effort to find the missing and murdered persons, and so today, I knew and then in San Francisco, and I just have a shout out to Aurora Mamea, Aurora, that I work with at Native American Health Center. She took some self-care time, and she went with the dance tour group to Paris. And this comes from Red Lightning Women's Singing Group. That they teach everyone how to make ribbon skirts. They teach everyone how to make moccasins. They just do all these cultural things. But today, when I was coming in, because it's a special time where I think we need to help each other and to do self-care. So in our remaining time, what does that mean, self-care? I was just really happy I got to listen to Mike. I listened to Mike Duncan, Native Dads Network. I like to check out what's going on at White Bison, what trainings Sparrow is doing. I love to see what the American Indian Cancer Foundation is doing. And then I'm always checking out, what El Puli and NAFA, because we're trying to help each other, not compete against each other. And so that, if you're trying to compete against other Indians, or you're trying to pull other Indians down, you better freaking knock it off, because you're not adding to the sisterhood and the brotherhood and the cohesiveness of us helping each other. And so I'll just say that much, because I want to be in, the reason we have Wellness Wednesday is to be uplifting and to give you ideas on how to take care of your mind, body, and spirit. So the self care, and and I'm going to talk about Aurora for a minute because we had a long conversation last night, and she had just flown back from Paris. And first we, as always, and that's my niece, and I said, well, we need to have a couple conversations until I see you in person. I said, because so much happened for me in the 15 days that I was with the Spirit Project. And then now you're coming back from Paris. And so this is, when I, and she goes, oh, Auntie, she said it was so funny when I first flew over there. She said, I couldn't tell, like something was not quite right with me. And so she said, I was trying to analyze, like, did I eat too much gluten? Did I eat too much bread? Or did I not sleep right? And then someone goes, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You just have jet lag. We started laughing because I said, yeah, because when when I travel like that, especially to when Native Wellness Institute would travel to Australia, we would get on that LA flight, and you fly 15 hours. You fly. It's really good to sleep on that flight, because if you don't sleep on that flight, it takes 4 days. And I was telling Aurora, so we got to. It's the love. It's that connection, because she will always be my niece. We're colleagues. I will always be her auntie, and it's because her mother did that for me, mentored me when I was young, and her grandma mentored me, and my mom mentored. It's like, we're very we're kinship. So think about that in your self care with your kinship. Who do you do self care with? And the self care can be, you know, it doesn't have to be an organized thing, but who can you grab and say, hey man, let's get the dog and let's just go for a walk. Let's talk. I think of Linda Woods. I think of Rose Abbott. I think of Harold Belmont. I think of Wanda and Harold Frog. And these were mentors. I think of John Spence. I think of Avis Archambault. I think of Tinker. I think of all these individuals that help surround yourself with your kinship, who has your best well-being in mind. And when it could be the fellowship. I mean, I love my fellowship. My fellowship of East Glacier, my fellowship of Native Wellness, my fellowship of Native Dads Network, my fellowship of White Bison, my fellowship of you. That's why we do Wellness Wednesday. Is we come to you because we want to keep the teachings of our ancestors alive. But in this, getting back to Aurora, as she started telling me, she goes, "Yeah, we had to perform and perform. They did performances 3 times a day." And so when you're sleeping and you're just getting up and eating and doing 3 performances, you don't do much else. And you have to get dressed. I mean, especially in your ending clothes. When you have to get. I was thinking about that going to the powwow this last weekend, because I hadn't brought my headdress. I'm taking some pause. I'm not taking it on planes anymore. I'm only taking it where I can drive and staying within the Blackfoot territory. But Aurora just said, yeah. She goes, oh my God, Auntie, I learned so much. And she said, and I heard singing. I never heard voices like that before. She said it was, she said, I said, are you bubbling? And like we were both bubbling. I said, okay, so we're both bubbling. So I'm just going to catch you up with what's been going on, because, as we work together in the future, we have to figure out what we have learned, because people change. And I'm talking about Aurora because she said, she said, Auntie, I am not the same person I was when I left on this trip. I am not the same. She said, I learned so much. I came back and I'm seeing my husband Monty different. I'm seeing my sons different. I'm seeing my work different. And so I said, Aurora, that's when I went on my self-care trip. I'm still journaling. I still haven't even posted all of the dancing, all of my aha moments, because I'm transforming. I'm transforming it. I'm not the theta that I was, and that we should allow to happen for every child and for every human being. That they all have the right to heal more. They all have the right to discover, to be nosy, to be curious about their own self development. And so I told, this is the story that I told to Aurora. I said, you know, Aurora, I was at Milk River, and there was these young traditional dancers, and they had traditional, and they had um, chicken dancers. And I said, and this young man, and he was very respectful. And I looked at him, and I eyeballed him, and he looked like us, like he was Blackfoot. And he came up to me, and he introduced himself, and he said, "My mom is named Bonnie Healy, and my dad is named Brett." So and so he made that connection because I had my stand-up headdress, and he said, "Could you record for me?" So he gives me his phone, and he goes out on the dance floor, and so then it wasn't an iPhone, must have been a Samsung, but I knew what he was learning, and this is, you have to listen to this. We're taught not to compete with other people. We're taught to compete with our younger self. And so he was recording how he was dancing now, because when he dances in the future, he wants to do better, and he's competing with his younger self. So how beautiful is that? Rather than competing with other people, or oh, I got the best app, or oh, we got the best training, or oh, our training is better than yours, or all that bullshit. it's it's not the colonizers. If you're colonized, go ahead and do it. Put some bleach on your skin, dye yourself white. Just dye yourself white and be a white person. Anyway, so I was just telling her, because I knew what he was doing. His parents had taught him so that he can watch it and improve what he's doing. So he's competing against his younger self, or how he's dancing now and how he could be better. And I was watching him because he had already that grace. He already had that grace going, and because he believed in Ishtabat, and he was, like we're taught. I was taught by my mother that you're dressing, you're putting your outfit on because you're gonna dance for Creator. And so it's like being married. You're getting in a marriage with Creator. So you got to have a good frame of mind. You got to smudge your feathers. You got, with that headdress, you got to start in the east. You got to beg Creator in the four directions to pray that everyone around you gets uplifted and has a long, healthy life. With all of your hair ties, if there's animals, if there's otters, if there's whatever your hair ties, you pray for, thank that animal for giving its life so that you could wear it, so you could dance. If there's, I had a seal skin that I used to dance with. That was a very good gift. You pray, you smudge that off. You smudge off the bottom of your moccasins. You put sage in your moccasins so that when you dance, know what, there's a spiritual protection all around you. You wear the things. This is my cousin, Nanamani her, she has one of the iron pipe names. When she came home last year, she gave me this. So when I carry it, I feel like I'm carrying the ancestors. So when you're getting ready to dance, and even braiding your hair, that ceremony of you're protecting your mind, body, and spirit, and then putting on your hair ties, and everything else. So it shouldn't be a hurry up job when you're getting ready to go out and dance for Creator and dance for people who can't dance. Wow. And so that self-care, as I was visiting me and it was where I'm at, it's hot. That's how Blackfoot say it, hut. H-U-T. I was real high. So I just said to Aurora, I said, could you sing me a sweat song? Because she has the most beautiful voice. And sometimes she will say, Aurora, just sing for me. Because I just, even though we're far away, it brings me back to when she was sundancing at Tom Crawford's. It brings me back to when Gail was alive. Fairchild. It brings me back. It brings me back to all those who danced hard. They always say, Jillian Joseph always will say, dance hard. Thank you, Jillian. Dance hard. Dance hard. And so Aurora, and so she was laughing. She goes, "You really want me to?" I said, "No, I'm just teasing you. It's just so warm. I feel like my eyeballs are sweaty." And I just let the sweat go out, and I said, "Oh," and I'm just walking because that's what I do. And it's kind of interesting, even as you get older, like I'm got the bull shoe body, and I got to take better care of it. I'm never gonna be Barbie like, and I don't want to be. I'm just got this old grandma body, and so we were just talking, and I said, okay, that's enough for now, because she needed to go to dinner with her family and her husband. I said, I just wanted to touch base with you because you just got back from Paris, and I wanted you to share stories with you, and I want to hear your stories. And I said, so let's let a few days pass, and then you and I will come together because I learned a lot of my self-care trip. But in that remaining time, I said, but one thing I learned is that I have to take better care of myself. Traveling with that many women, on a bus, and they took Sophie, and thank you, Lisa Martin, and thank you for Sally that I met from Maori. All of those, they took such good care of the elders. But at the same time, self-care is letting other people take care of you. It isn't to be ruthlessly independent. It's letting, because they made sure if you had a gluten allergy or whatever, you were served. And wherever we went, we were abundantly fed fresh salmon. We were abundantly fed. They just got crabs, and we got our own crab. We went to places where we were fed fresh corn because they had sweet corn, and they had grown their own corn. They had grown their own vegetables, and one of the and I would call him like the Maori chief. When I was sitting with him, and we got to talk about his taomoko, and he was fully taomokoed, like had sleeves of taomoko, and then his calves and his legs, and we got to, and I got to tell him how I got this taomoko when my father died, and how it protects me and what it means. And I said, and that was over 20 years ago, but now it's more meaningful to me because when the ceremony that I was in at Deidre Nahula, to get my taomoko, I remember him saying, what was in the ceremony, what he seen was the afterlife, the in-between, and this life. And there's that I can go in between them. And now I understand that by how I astral travel in dreams. But he was this part of the taomoko, him saying that he said, you would live a better life if you lived like your ancestors and not like your oppressors. Wow, that was like boing. When you get boing, that was like I would live a better life. And so in talking with him, and I guess I'll wind down with this. We had a long ride. It was about 2.5 hours. But what we end up talking about was gut health. and they called it gut health. And there's all these technical terms, but it was about how you took care of your insides. And so one of the ways that him and his wife, and they want to have as many children as possible. Isn't that kind of, rather than say 3 or 4, he said as many as possible. And so he wore like the Maori medallion, the jade, the rock, You're supposed to wear it so it has your energy, and then it's given to your child. But he had several, and I go, how many kids you gonna have? He goes, as many as possible. I go, woohoo! That's, well, how many kids you gonna have? Many as possible, because we we have kids, we adopt kids, but this gut health, and I guess I'll, as we're winding down on Wellness Wednesday, he said for our, they had a 6 month old, and he was missing his 6 months old, and that was why he chose to come on this trip, of the importance of the global. But he said, I'm missing my son so much. And he said, and we're at the point where, and they have their word for sweet potatoes. He said he's just had breast milk, and so for gut health, a baby should have breast milk. And when you're going to introduce, you should introduce your ancestral foods. So they're actually, this first meal is where they're going to take like sweet potato and mash it up and add the breast milk, and that's going to be the baby's first meal. And this is what was mind blowing to me, because one of the, he said, my family, I'm raising my children, and my wife and we never ate processed foods. And so I was listening, and I was just mind blown. He said the way that we're changing the globe, and the way that we're changing for our children that are born to 6 years old, is is gut health. And that's, he said, my family. So, and I was watching, and then after that, like and when you hear something, badass anti eyeballs, and see if that's really what you do. That's how we catch you, eh? So I started watching him, and yes, he would eat the protein. Yes, he would eat the salmon. Yes, he ate the fresh vegetables. Yes, he ate the fresh fruit. But I never seen him touch any of the processed foods. And we didn't have a lot of processed foods. He said, no, that is our the way we're changing with our family, our Marai, and where we are, is we're practicing gut health. So I think that I'm just going to kind of wind down. I wanted to come to you today. I'm feeling, I'm in that recovery state where I'm just communicating really intensely with my colleagues, my family, my sisters, Timothy, my colleague, but I'm in this state right now. I need this, after this self-care, which was going to be all of July. I'm going to tiptoe into August. So I invite you to tiptoe into August. And so I want to give a shout out to Margaret Ann Yellow Kidney. She's bringing all the maternal health programs across Montana. I just feel so honored that they invited me on the 5th to come and say the prayer. They invited Mary Ellen Laframboy to say the prayer on the 6th. I thought, wow, what an honor. So I thought, how nice to just be called and visit a little, and say the prayer. And then I've been invited to Heart Butte. And my mom is checking out the schedule, because she said, we don't camp anymore, but she said, Nellie, I want to go to the parade, then I want to go over to the arbor. And that means that she might be feeling good enough to dance. So that means I have to get all ready. I have to get my butt down the road to get a good spot, because we always park in the same spot by the Methodist church to watch the parade. And then we got to bring our powwow chairs, and then you got to be dressed enough, kind of like half dressed in your outfit, so that you don't have to put on too much. And then you can dance a grand entry at Heart Butte Indian Days. And why is it special? Because we just had the grand opening yesterday of the new store. We have a new gas station, and we have a brand new dance arbor. And we've always had rickety, made out of wood, and a couple nails, to splash some paint on it. But we have a brand new Swank was contracted to build us a brand new dance arbor. So I'm just going to do happy things. And so I'm encouraging you on wellness. Welcome to Native Wellness, Wellness Wednesday. As you leave the month of July, think of it as self-care. You got reflections to work more on your healing, but tiptoe into August. And as you tiptoe into happy things. The 29th Montana Two-Spirit gathering starts on August 14th. Of course, there's Crow Fair. You can always come to Montana. We have, I think, Rocky Boy is next. Milk River was the best. I have never hugged so many people I hadn't seen. I just, and there was some Filipino food there. Filipino food at the powwow. Anyway, it was like you can see Indians in line, adobo. They were just in line. And a shout out to Peggy and Domi for letting me stay at their house. Because sometimes I get tired of hotels, so I stay with my friends. And it was just the best time to see their son Aaron. I got to see him. We were at his wedding, and he had a contentment. He had a gleam in his eye because he just got married to Alicia. And and I was just being with family. So I'm gonna sign off now. But think about that the lessons, and maybe I'll be talking about this for a couple of weeks because I'm just rereading that. You know how you read the big book, you read your Al-Anon book, or you read something. I'm just gonna keep reading this because every time I read it, I see something new that helps me with my self-care, that helps me with my family, that helps me with my tribe, that helps us with our organization. We're all in transformation. We're all restructuring, and so as you're tiptoeing into August, I'll see you every Wednesday. I'll see you next week. And Kitakito Matsuno.